I never thought I'd become the kind of mother who fights the education system. But when my daughter came home in tears, something inside me shifted forever. My name is Elena Petrova, and I am 34 years old. I live in a small provincial town in the south of Russia, and I'm raising my 9-year-old daughter, Katya, alone. Our town is so quiet and peaceful that sometimes it seems like time has stopped here. Everyone knows each other's faces. News spreads like wildfire in a drought. I've worked as an accountant at a local construction company for 8 years, ever since Katya's father decided that family life wasn't for him. My salary of 120,000 rubles doesn't make us rich, but it allows us to live with dignity. Katya and I live in a small 2-room apartment on the 6th floor of a panel building on the outskirts. Wallpaper with tiny flowers, old but well-maintained furniture, bookshelves along the walls filled with classics and children's fairy tales. Katya has always been a shy but very smart child with an amazing love for poetry. At the age of 9, she already knew dozens of poems by heart, from Pushkin to Tsvetiva. Her red hair tied in 2 pigtails and the scattering of freckles on her nose made her look like a little ray of sunshine. Teachers always praised her for her diligence and thirst for knowledge. Until that day, the day that changed everything. It all started in mid-November, when the school announced the annual recitation contest dedicated to the works of Anna Akhmatova. I remember that evening well, when Katya flew into the apartment waving a school flyer about the contest. Her eyes sparkled with delight, and the words flew out so quickly that I could barely understand them. She was thrilled and immediately decided to participate. Akhmatova, we both loved her. Her poems often resonated in our home. Together we chose a poem suitable for her age and temperament, not too long, but deep in meaning. Every evening after work, when the dishes were washed and the homework was done, I helped her practice her performance. We experimented with intonations, pauses, and facial expressions. I recorded her on an old smartphone, and we analyzed each performance together. Setting aside part of my bonus, 5,000 rubles, I bought her a special black dress for the contest, simple but elegant, with a white collar and a thin belt. Katya twirled in front of the mirror trying it on, and she looked so happy that my heart ached with love and pride. She was so much like me as a child, just as dreamy and serious. Katya often repeated a phrase that became her personal motto: "Circumstances may change me, but I refuse to be small." These words made her stronger. I saw her eyes light up when she said them. She rehearsed in front of the mirror in the bathroom, in front of our neighbors in the hallway, even in front of our old gray cat, Murzik, who seemed to listen attentively, sitting on the windowsill and squinting his yellow eyes. At school, Katya was taught Russian language and literature by Tatiana Vasilieva, a woman of about 50, with perfectly styled chestnut hair in a strict hairstyle and perpetually pursed lips. She had an established reputation as a strict, even harsh teacher. 15 years of experience had made her a respected, but also intimidating, figure in the school hallways. Children whispered behind her back, afraid of her sharp remarks and sudden calls to the blackboard. I had heard different reviews from other parents at meetings, but I tried not to judge in advance, preferring to form my own opinion. 2 weeks before the final competition, in which children from all the schools in our city were to participate, Katya gave a preliminary performance in her class. It was an ordinary practice session to prepare for the real performance. She was more nervous than ever before. Although we had rehearsed dozens of times in public, it's always different. Her voice trembled, and at one point she stumbled and forgot the text for a second. It was just a child's fear of the public, nothing unusual or terrible. But Tatiana Vasilyeva's reaction changed everything. I was not present at this lesson, but other children and their parents told me in detail about what happened. The teacher, dissatisfied with Katya's performance, didn't just make a comment, as is usually the case. She got up from her seat, approached my daughter, and said loud enough for everyone in the class to hear every word, "You are just as worthless as your mother." The entire class of 30 students froze, and Katya simply froze in place like a small statue. Her cheeks flushed with shame and humiliation, and her eyes filled with tears that she tried her best to hold back. Katya came home that day a completely different child. I immediately noticed the change as soon as she crossed the threshold of our apartment. Usually she would rush in with stories about her school day, with questions and comments, but that Tuesday she walked in silently, without raising her eyes, mumbled something instead of a greeting, and went straight to her room. She didn't want to talk, didn't want to eat the borscht I had prepared, which she usually asked for seconds of. She refused lunch, citing a stomach ache. Only late in the evening, when I sat on the edge of her bed to wish her good night, did she finally tell me what happened and burst into tears in my arms as she hadn't cried since early childhood. Her little shoulders shook with deep sobs, and I stroked her head, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me with such force that it became difficult to breathe. It wasn't just anger, but some primal rage, a desire to protect my child from pain. What happened to my cheerful, confident girl in just one school day? She refused to go back to school, saying that everyone would laugh at her now, that Liza Sokolova and Dima Volkov were already giggling in the hallway when she went to lunch, that she would never, ever read poetry in front of people again. She took the black dress off the hanger and threw it into the far corner of the closet, saying that she hated it. The volume of Akhmatova with bookmarks and notes ended up under the bed. The poems that used to resonate in our home every evening no longer filled the space. Silence, interrupted only by the ticking of the clock and the purring of the cat, filled our small apartment. I didn't sleep all night, thinking about what happened, going through possible courses of action. My first instinct was the most primitive: to burst into the school the next day, find this woman, and make a scene right in front of her colleagues and students, to shout at her, to pour out all my anger and pain for the humiliation of my child, to make her feel at least some of the shame that my daughter had experienced. In my imagination, I saw her smug face pale at my words, how she retreated, unable to find an answer. But then, somewhere around 3 in the morning, I remembered what I had always taught Katia: that actions speak louder than words, that evidence is stronger than accusations, that true strength is not in the loudness of the voice, but in the righteousness of the position. I had to set an example to show how problems are truly solved in a civilized society. I couldn't sink to the level of a market squabble and empty threats. This would not only not solve the problem, but could harm Katia even more. I needed a plan, cold and calculating, not an emotional outburst, but a well-thought-out strategy, a revenge that would come not through shouting and threats, but through the law and the system. I knew from my experience working with documents that any system, even the most unwieldy, has its own rules and levers of influence. I just needed to find the right ones. The next morning, I sent Katia to my mother, her grandmother, who lived in the next building, saying that she needed a day off to recover. Mom didn't ask any unnecessary questions. Seeing my condition, she just hugged me and said that she would take care of Katia. I called work and took a day off for family reasons. My boss, an understanding man with 2 daughters, didn't object. The day was dedicated to gathering information, the first step of my plan. First, I sat down at my old laptop and began a methodical investigation. I opened the school website, studied the school charter in minute detail, found and carefully read the rules of conduct for teachers and the code of professional ethics for educators. Then I went to the website of the Ministry of Education, where I found clear regulations and requirements for the teaching staff. For hours, I wrote down the necessary points, took screenshots of pages, and saved documents to a separate folder on my desktop. I highlighted particularly important points in yellow marker in the printouts. Each point I found strengthened my confidence that I had grounds for complaint. At the same time, I compiled a list of all of Katia's classmates, with whose parents we were at least superficially acquainted. Turned out to be 12 names. I methodically called their mothers and fathers, trying to speak calmly and businesslike. Many expressed sympathy and indignation at the teacher's behavior, but were afraid of open conflict with her. Tatiana Vasilyeva's influence at the school was significant. She was friends with the principal and had a reputation as a person who does not forgive offenses. Some refused to talk about this topic at all, fearing that their children would become the next victims of her displeasure. I understood their fear, but I couldn't share it. My daughter had already suffered. I had nothing to lose. On the 5th call, I finally got lucky. The mother of Maxim Kuznetsov, a quiet boy who sat next to Katia at the 3rd desk, agreed to meet. Anna Kuznetsova worked in the city library and had a reputation as a principled person. We agreed to meet in a small park not far from the school, when the children were in class. The day was cool but sunny. The trees had already shed their leaves, but the snow had not yet fallen. We sat on a bench wrapped in coats and spoke quietly, although there was no one around. Maxim told his mother in detail about that day, and she allowed him to talk to me. The boy, serious beyond his years, confirmed every word of the teacher. He even remembered how some children, especially from the group of local bullies, laughed after her comment, pointing their fingers at Katya, how she stood at the blackboard, unable to move, until Tatiana Vasilieva told her to sit down and not embarrass the class with her lack of preparation. I recorded Maxim's story on a voice recorder on my phone with his mother's permission. This audio file, 2 megabytes in size, became the first stone in the foundation of my case. The next step was to gather information about past incidents involving Tatiana Vasilyeva's behavior. Through parents from parallel classes, through acquaintances of acquaintances, through former school graduates, I gradually built a picture. It turned out that Tatiana Vasilyeva had a long-standing habit of humiliating children from single-parent families, especially those raised by single mothers. As if a single-parent family was a sign of some unpardonable defect, as if children were responsible for the decisions of adults. Over the past 3 years, there have been at least 5 cases similar to ours. I found 2 more parents with similar stories, whose children are now in the 6th and 7th grades. They agreed to support me if the case went to official proceedings. Their written testimonies, certified with signatures, were placed in my folder next to the printouts from the internet. I spent 3 days collecting information, documents, and evidence, not showing up at work and sending Katya to her grandmother. My living room turned into a real operations headquarters. On the wall above the sofa hung excerpts from the school charter, notes from legal articles, and diagrams of the relationships between teachers and the school administration, compiled based on conversations with parents. I studied every point relating to the ethical behavior of teachers and found at least 3 direct violations in Tatiana Vasilyeva's actions: humiliation of a student, public comparison with other children or adults, and the use of evaluative judgments instead of constructive criticism. Each of these violations could be grounds for disciplinary action. On the evening of the 3rd day, Katya came home and saw my preparations. Stacks of papers on the table hung on the walls, notes and diagrams, and my laptop with dozens of tabs open. She silently examined everything without asking questions. In her eyes, I noticed a strange mixture of fear and hope. She didn't believe that anything could change. The school system seemed to her unshakable and eternal, and the teacher all-powerful, almost a mythical creature capable of ruining a life with one word. But I saw something else. In those green eyes, so like my own, a reluctance to give up, a spark of struggle that neither public humiliation nor the mockery of classmates could extinguish. That night, when she was already asleep, I went into her room and looked at her sleeping face for a long time. She seemed so small and defenseless. Her favorite books stood on the bookshelf above her bed. Next to the bed were soft toys that I had given her for various holidays. On the wall hung a drawing of a cat made with colored pencils, with the inscription, "For the best mom in the world." Looking at all this, I vowed to myself that I would not stop until I achieved justice. Not for the sake of revenge, but so that Katya would never again experience the feeling of helplessness and humiliation that she experienced in the classroom. On the 4th day, I was fully prepared. I collected all the documents in a neat black folder with a clasp, put on my best business suit of dark blue color, which I usually saved for important meetings with clients, styled my hair in a strict hairstyle, applied minimal makeup, and put on stud earrings given to me by my mother for my 30th birthday. I looked professional and confident, although everything inside me was trembling with nervous tension. I left Katya at home, saying that I was going to resolve an important matter. She just nodded, without asking questions, but her gaze followed me to the door, full of unspoken words. The school I was heading to was a typical 3-story building of Soviet construction made of red brick. Wide windows, high ceilings, long corridors with linoleum worn by thousands of children's feet. The air had the characteristic smell of the school cafeteria, chalk, and wet cleaning. The The school corridors were empty. Lessons had already begun. Only an occasional late student ran by or a thoughtful teacher passed by with a journal under his arm. My heels tapped out a clear rhythm on the tiled floor of the lobby, attracting the curious glances of the on-duty high school students at the entrance. The principal's office was on the third floor, at the end of the main corridor, next to the teacher's lounge. A solid oak door with a bronze plaque indicated the status of its occupant, the school principal Igor Petrovich Sokolov. I took a deep breath, smoothed my already perfectly styled hair, knocked and entered after a short invitation. The principal was clearly surprised by my visit. A tall man, about 55 years old, with graying temples and a stern gaze from under thick eyebrows. He was wearing a classic gray suit and a white shirt with a burgundy tie. In his office, spacious and bright, smelled of coffee and old books. The walls were hung with diplomas and certificates of the school, photographs from school events and graduation parties. Behind him hung a portrait of the president, and on the massive dark wood desk stood a computer and several stacks of papers. He offered me a seat in a leather visitor's chair, politely inquiring about the purpose of my visit. His politeness was professional but cold, like a doctor asking about symptoms. He was clearly busy and did not expect a long conversation. In his eyes, there was a slight impatience and a desire to end this unexpected meeting as soon as possible. I introduced myself, explained that I was the mother of Katia Petrova from the 4th B class, then calmly, trying to control the slight tremor in my voice, told about what happened, about the public humiliation, about the teacher's words, about Katia's condition after this incident. I spoke facts, avoiding emotional assessments and exaggerations, only what happened, without personal comments. The principal listened carefully. His face did not express any emotions. Only occasionally he nodded slightly, showing that he was following the story. He was a professional in concealing his reactions. Years of working with parents and teachers had honed this skill to perfection. When I finished my story, silence hung in the office for a few seconds. Then the principal sighed slightly, leaned back in his chair, and began to talk about how much they valued Tatiana Vasilieva at the school, about her many years of experience, professionalism, the high results of students in Olympiads and competitions of various levels, about her methodological work and active participation in the life of the school, about the fact that she is an honored teacher with certificates and awards. It was a standard defensive speech which I expected to hear and was prepared for. The principal's words were as if prepared in advance for such cases, like a memorized text from a guide on working with dissatisfied parents. I didn't argue or raise my voice, as the principal might have expected. No emotional scene or accusations. Instead, I simply opened my folder and began to methodically lay out the documents on his desk. A recording of the conversation with Maxim, a witness to the incident, written testimonies from other parents about similar cases over the past 3 years, excerpts from the school charter and the code of ethics for educators with the violated points highlighted, and finally, an official statement drawn up according to all the rules, demanding an investigation into the incident and the taking of appropriate measures against the teacher who violated ethical norms. The principal was clearly stunned by my preparation and the materials I had collected. He expected to see another emotional mother, who could be easily calmed down with general phrases about the complexities of the pedagogical process and the need to trust professionals. Instead, before him sat a woman with a legally competent dossier and clear demands based on official documents. His confidence began to melt before his eyes like spring snow under the rays of the sun. He carefully reviewed the provided materials and his face became more and more serious with each page he read. He was especially impressed by the audio recording of Maxim's story, where Tatiana Vasilyeva's words to my daughter sounded clearly and unambiguously. "You are just as worthless as your mother." This phrase, spoken in a child's voice, sounded even more shocking than when I repeated it in my own words. The principal stopped the recording several times, as if not believing his ears, then continued to listen, frowning more and more. A tense pause hung in the office, taking my breath away. I was silent. I gave him time to realize the seriousness of the situation and the possible consequences. He understood that I would not leave just like that, having received standard assurances that everything would be sorted out, that I had every reason for an official complaint, not only to the school administration but also to higher authorities up to the city education department. This could create serious problems not only for the specific teacher, but for the entire school, its reputation, and ultimately for him personally as the leader. The wall clock ticked, the papers on the desk rustled, and somewhere outside the window children's voices could be heard during recess. Finally, the principal broke the silence and his tone changed noticeably. The condescending confidence disappeared, giving way to businesslike seriousness. He said that what happened undoubtedly required a thorough and objective review, that Tatiana Vasilievna's behavior, if everything was confirmed, really violated pedagogical ethics and the principles of school education. He proposed organizing an official meeting with the participation of Tatiana Vasilieva herself, the school psychologist, and his deputy for academic work. I agreed to this proposal, understanding that this was the first step towards solving the problem. But at the same time, I insisted on the presence of a representative of the school's parent committee to ensure maximum objectivity of the proceedings. The principal nodded reluctantly, clearly preferring to resolve such issues in a narrower circle. However, he understood that he had no grounds to refuse this request, especially given the materials I had collected and my determined attitude. The meeting was scheduled for the next day, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, after the end of the main lessons. I thanked the principal for his attention to the problem, collected my documents, and left the office. In the hallway, I took a deep breath, feeling both relief from the first step taken and tension from the upcoming clash. Stepping out into the street, I felt the cool wind on my face and suddenly realized how sweaty my palms had become during the conversation. The tension gradually subsided, giving way to a feeling of small but important victory. I returned home with a sense of first success in this difficult struggle. Katia met me with a questioning look, but did not dare to ask directly. I just smiled and said that there was progress and everything would be all right soon. She looked at me incredulously, but a faint spark of hope flashed in her eyes. That evening, we made her favorite pancakes with apples and cinnamon together, set the table with a festive tablecloth, and lit candles. A little celebration amid our battle, a moment of normalcy and warmth in the Cold War with the system. At night, I slept badly again, replaying the upcoming meeting in my head, thinking through every word and argument. I knew that Tatiana Vasilieva would defend herself in every possible way. She could deny the very fact of uttering offensive words or downplay their significance, blaming it on emotional fatigue at the end of the working day. She could accuse Katia of being overly sensitive and unprepared for the performance. She could hint at my supposedly excessive pressure on the child and unrealistic expectations. I had to be ready for anything, to have an answer to every possible accusation. Mentally, I rehearsed every word, every argument, like an actress before the premiere of an important play. The morning of the next day was cloudy. The sky was covered with heavy gray clouds, as if nature reflected the tension of the upcoming situation. A fine, drizzling rain tapped on the visors of entrances and puddles on the asphalt. I took Katia to school, convincing her that everything would be all right and she had nothing to fear. She was frightened by the prospect of meeting the teacher again, but agreed to go after much persuasion. I promised to pick her up immediately after lessons, without waiting for extended day. In her eyes, I saw trust mixed with fear, and I could not betray that trust. Returning home, I once again reviewed all the collected materials, made sure that nothing was missed, then carefully chose clothes for the upcoming meeting. Not too formal, so as not to create a feeling of excessive aggressiveness, but also businesslike enough to emphasize the seriousness of my intentions. I settled on black pants, a white blouse, and a gray jacket, restrained and tasteful, as my mother had taught me. I didn't want my appearance to give any reason for criticism or distract from the essence of the conversation. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the principal's office. I arrived 15 minutes early to gather my thoughts and mentally prepare for the upcoming conversation. In the principal's reception room, a small room with a secretarial desk and several chairs along the wall, the representative of the school's parent committee, Alla Sergeevna Romanova, was already waiting. I knew her from parent-teacher meetings. She was the mother of one of Katia's classmates and had a reputation as a fair and principled person. She was on my side, which gave me additional confidence in the upcoming conversation. We briefly discussed the strategy, agreeing to support each other and not succumb to possible provocations. Exactly at 2 o'clock, the principal's secretary, a young woman in glasses, invited us into the office. When we entered, the principal, his deputy for academic work, Elena Andreevna, the school psychologist, Marina Viktorovna, and of course Tatiana Vasilieva herself were already there. The teacher looked tense and annoyed, as if she had been torn away from important matters for the sake of empty formality. Her strict pinstripe suit, perfectly styled hair, and flawless makeup created the image of an impregnable fortress, ready to repel any attack. She looked down on me, with her whole appearance, demonstrating superiority and disdain. In her eyes, there was clear dissatisfaction that some single mother dared to challenge her. The principal began the meeting in an official tone, explaining its purpose and introducing all those present. Then he invited me as the initiator of the proceedings to state the essence of the claim. I spoke calmly and clearly, describing the situation without unnecessary emotions, relying only on the facts. I told about the recitation contest, about Katia's preliminary performance, about the words spoken by Tatiana Vasilieva, about the daughter's reaction, and the consequences for her psychological state. I didn't raise my voice, didn't make dramatic pauses, just stated the events as they happened, from time to time. Referring to the evidence gathered, Tatiana Vasilieva listened with a stone face, showing no emotion. Only her hands, clasped in her lap, betrayed her inner tension, her knuckles white from the strain. Once, she tried to interrupt me, but the director stopped her with a gesture, suggesting she listen completely and then comment. When I finished my speech, silence hung in the office for a moment. Then, the director invited Tatiana Vasilieva to present her version of events. She stood up, straightened her shoulders, and began her defense. As I had suspected, she did not deny the fact that she had uttered the controversial words, but tried to justify and reframe them. She spoke of the high standards of modern education, of the need to prepare children for a real life full of competition and criticism, and that modern children are too spoiled by parental overprotection and are not ready for constructive criticism. She argued that her words had been taken out of context and misinterpreted, that she only wanted to motivate the student to prepare more diligently. Her tone was condescending and self-assured, as if she were explaining obvious things to people incapable of understanding them. But then something happened that I did not expect at all, and that turned the tide of the meeting. The school psychologist, a young woman in her 30s named Marina Viktorovna, unexpectedly stood up for Katia. She asked for the floor and, having received the director's permission, began to talk about the psychological impact of public humiliation on a child of elementary school age, about how such words, especially spoken by an authoritative adult, can deeply and lastingly affect self-esteem, academic motivation, and future development. She referred to research in child psychology, cited specific examples from her practice, and spoke confidently and professionally, leaving no room for objection. Then, she spoke about her conversation with Katia that morning, about how the girl literally cringed at the mention of the teacher's name, how she was afraid to return to class, how she had lost interest in poetry, which she used to love so much, about the nightmares and the fear of public speaking that had suddenly arisen in a previously confident girl. All these consequences, in her professional opinion, were a direct result of the psychological trauma caused by the teacher's thoughtless and unprofessional actions. Tatiana Vasilieva clearly did not expect such a turn of events and support from an unexpected source. In her eyes, there was a flicker of uncertainty and something akin to genuine guilt, as if only now she truly realized the consequences of her words. She tried to object, arguing that the psychologist was exaggerating and dramatizing the situation, but her arguments became weaker and less convincing. She began to falter, repeat herself, and excuse herself with tiredness and a heavy workload, which only reinforced the impression that she was wrong. The director listened attentively to both sides. His gaze became more thoughtful and serious. He was beginning to understand that the situation was much more serious than it seemed at first and required a real, not a formal, solution. He took notes in his notebook, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but generally remained neutral, showing no obvious preference for either side. Alla Sergeyevna, a representative of the parents' committee, also took the floor and spoke out with unexpectedly strong support for my position. She spoke about the concerns of other parents regarding Tatiana Vasilievna's working methods, about how the case with Katia was not an isolated one, that similar incidents had happened before, but parents were afraid to speak out openly, fearing negative consequences for their children, that many children are afraid of literature lessons, and some even fake illnesses in order not to attend classes. These testimonies, delivered by a respected member of the school community, were a powerful argument that was hard to ignore. They moved the problem from the realm of a single incident to a systemic problem requiring real intervention from management. By the end of the 2-hour meeting, the atmosphere in the office had completely changed. Tatiana Vasilieva no longer looked as confident and unshakable as she had at the beginning of the conversation. Her shoulders drooped, her gaze often fell to the floor, and her hands nervously fiddled with the edge of her jacket. It was clear that she was beginning to realize the seriousness of the situation and the possible consequences for her career. Perhaps for the first time in her many years of work, she had faced real opposition to her methods and the need to answer for her words and actions. The director announced that he needed time to carefully analyze all the information presented and make a balanced decision. He promised to take into account all the opinions and facts voiced, and to consult with the school's lawyer regarding the legal aspects of the situation. He asked everyone to leave the office except Tatiana Vasilieva, with whom he wanted to speak alone. I saw fear in her eyes as I left the office, and it was an unusual, almost surreal feeling. The teacher, who had seemed all-powerful until recently, suddenly appeared to be an ordinary person, vulnerable and frightened. Waiting for the director's decision was agonizing. I took Katia out of school as I had promised, without telling her the details of the meeting, so as not to traumatize her again. We spent the evening playing board games and watching her favorite cartoon, trying to distract ourselves from worrying thoughts. Katia gradually became more relaxed and open, even laughing sincerely several times at funny moments in the game. It was a small but important sign of the beginning of the healing of her soul, the return of the cheerful and inquisitive girl I had known before the incident. The director's call came the next morning as I was getting Katia ready for school. His voice sounded official and restrained, but I heard in it notes of respect and even some reverence. He reported that after careful consideration of all the circumstances of the case, consultation with the school's lawyer and representatives of the education department, it had been decided to apply disciplinary measures to Tatiana Vasilieva. She was suspended from working with elementary school classes with immediate effect, received a severe reprimand on her personal record, and was required to take special courses in pedagogical ethics and child psychology. In addition, she was ordered to issue an official apology to Katia and me in the presence of the school psychologist. But the good news did not end there. The director also said that he personally apologized for what had happened and took some responsibility for the lack of control over the working methods of teachers. He offered Katia a special opportunity to perform at the annual school concert in honor of Victory Day with the poem by Akhmatova that she had been preparing for the competition. It would not just be a concert number, but a kind of moral compensation, a public recognition of her talent and hard work. It was more than I expected or could have hoped for. A small personal victory turned into a full-fledged triumph of justice, proof that a system that seemed unapproachable and indifferent can work properly if you find the right levers of influence. I thanked the director for the fair decision and promised to discuss his proposal to perform with Katia. When I told my daughter the news, she didn't believe it at first. In her eyes, there was disbelief mixed with hope. The teacher, who seemed all-powerful, had been punished. Her words and actions did not go unpunished. It was almost unbelievable in her 9-year-old perception of the world, where adults are always right and children must obey and not object. Only when I confirmed that it was all true did her face light up with the first real smile in recent days. She threw herself on my neck with such force that we both almost fell, and whispered, "Thank you." There was so much love and gratitude in this simple word that I could barely breathe. The news of the director's decision quickly spread throughout the school, passed from mouth to mouth by students, teachers, and parents. My phone didn't stop ringing all day. Other parents called, expressing support and gratitude for my courage and persistence. Many confessed that they had long been unhappy with Tatiana Vasilieva's methods, but were afraid to speak out, fearing the consequences. My actions gave them hope that change was possible, that the parent's voice could be heard if it sounded loud and reasoned enough. Some teachers also secretly expressed support, although they could not do so openly for reasons of professional solidarity. The young physical education teacher caught me in the hallway and, looking around, quickly said that I had done the right thing, that such working methods were unacceptable in a modern school. Even the school librarian, a quiet woman of pre-retirement age, found a way to express her approval, offering Katia new books with the words that such an inquisitive and talented girl needed to read more. A new literature teacher, a young and energetic Victoria Andreevna, a recent graduate of the Pedagogical University, was appointed for Katia's class. She brought a fresh approach to teaching, emphasizing support and encouragement rather than criticism and fear. Her lessons were built on dialogue and mutual respect. She was able to find an individual approach to each child, emphasizing strengths and tactfully helping to overcome weaknesses. The children loved her lessons, including my daughter, who again began to actively participate in discussions and complete additional assignments in literature. Gradually, an atmosphere of mutual respect and trust was created in the class. The fear of making mistakes and ridicule disappeared. The children became more open and creative, more often expressing their thoughts and ideas without fear of being judged or ridiculed. Even the relationships between classmates changed. There was less teasing and more mutual help and support. Victoria Andreevna was able not only to teach the subject but also to instill the best human qualities in children by personal example. Katia, after some hesitation and doubt, decided to participate in the poetry competition, which was to be held in 2 weeks. We took the black dress out of the far corner of the closet, carefully ironed it, and tried it on again. It still fit perfectly, emphasizing the fragility and grace of her figure. She began to rehearse again, now under the guidance of Victoria Andreevna, who gave valuable advice on expressive reading. But now, something new had appeared in her attitude to the poems and the performance. The motto she used to repeat sounded different. "I don't just refuse to be tiny, I choose to be strong." These words reflected her new experience, a new understanding of life and her place in it. She became more serious, more thoughtful, as if she had grown up in these few weeks, by several years. In her eyes, there was a new depth, a new awareness of the world and herself. The trial she had gone through had left its mark, but it had not broken her. It had steeled her character. The day of the poetry competition arrived on a clear spring day in early April. The sun flooded the streets of the city. The first leaves appeared on the trees. The air smelled of freshness and hope. The school assembly hall was full of parents, teachers, and students who had come to listen to young talents. All the seats were taken. Many stood along the walls, unable to find free seats. There was a light hum of voices in the hall, the rustle of programs, the sounds of equipment being adjusted. I sat in the third row, nervously clutching a program with the names of the participants in my hands. Katia was one of the last performers, which only increased my anxiety. Next to me sat my mother, who had come specially to support her granddaughter on this important day. My heart was pounding as if I was about to go on stage in front of hundreds of eyes. It turned out that support sometimes requires more courage and strength than the struggle itself. I worried about Katia more than I had ever worried about performing myself, although I understood that she was ready. The competition began with a welcoming speech from the director, who thanked all the participants for their preparation and wished them good luck. One after another, children of different ages, from first graders to high school students, took to the stage and read poems by Akhmatova, Tsvetova, Pushkin, and Lermontov. Some performed brilliantly, others got confused and forgot the words from excitement. The hall would fall silent, listening attentively, then explode with applause, supporting the performers. Finally, the host of the competition, the head teacher of the elementary school, Svetlana Pavlovna, announced Katia's name. The hall fell silent in anticipation. I straightened up in my chair, squeezing my mother's hand so hard that it probably hurt. Katia came out on stage in her black dress, slender and serious beyond her years. Her red hair was neatly styled in a hairstyle that emphasized the oval of her face. She stood in front of the microphone in the center of the stage, took a deep breath, as we had rehearsed, and looked around the hushed hall and began to read. Her voice, initially quiet and a little hesitant, gradually gained strength, becoming more confident and expressive. In it sounded the same inner strength that we had cherished during these difficult weeks. She read Akhmatova's poem about steadfastness and rebirth, about the ability of the human spirit to overcome any trials and tribulations, about how after the darkest night, dawn always comes, and I will still be resurrected. These words sounded especially powerful, filling the whole hall with their strength and conviction. In them was not only the poetry of the great Akhmatova, but also the personal story of my little but so strong daughter, a story of falling and recovery, a story of finding her voice and faith in justice. When she finished, there was complete silence in the hall for a moment, and then it exploded with applause, real, well-deserved applause of recognition and admiration. People in the hall stood up from their seats, continuing to applaud. I saw the director, sitting in the first row, applaud with particular enthusiasm, Victoria Andreevna wiping away a tear, and the other contestants looking at Katya with sincere admiration. It was a moment of true triumph, a moment when all the trials and struggles found their meaning and completion. Katya did not take first place in the competition. She came second after a girl from the 7th grade, which was an amazing result for her age. But it didn't matter anymore, it didn't matter at all. She had received something much more valuable than any diploma or cup. Confidence in herself and her abilities, an understanding that justice is possible if you fight for it, the realization that one person, even a little girl, can stand up to the system and win if she has truth and determination on her side, that mom will always be there, ready to protect and support, but at the same time teach independence and strength. After the competition, many people came up to congratulate Katya on her wonderful performance. Classmates who used to laugh at her now looked at her with respect. The parents of other children shook her hand like an adult. The teachers praised her expressive reading and deep understanding of the text. Among the congratulators was Victoria Andreevna, with sincere pride and warmth in her eyes. She hugged Katya and whispered in her ear that she was proud of her not only as a student but also as a person. In the corner of the hall, I noticed Tatiana Vasilieva. She stood alone, a little apart from the general excitement, watching what was happening from afar. She looked older and tired. There was some kind of lostness and confusion in her posture. Our eyes met for a moment across the hall. I did not see anger or resentment in her eyes, only tiredness and perhaps understanding. An understanding that her methods were in the past, that a new generation of teachers and parents carried different values and approaches. I felt no hatred or desire for further revenge towards her, just satisfaction that justice had prevailed and the hope that this lesson would benefit not only her but the whole school. That evening, Katya and I celebrated her success at our favorite family cafe in the central square of the city. I ordered her favorite spaghetti with cheese and ice cream with chocolate chips for dessert. We sat by the window, watching the evening life of the city, the people hurrying about their business, the pigeons pecking crumbs in the square. Katya was lively and happy, sharing her impressions of the competition, talking about the compliments she had received, laughing at the funny moments of the day. My daughter had returned, even stronger and more confident than before. At some point, she suddenly became serious and asked me, looking straight into my eyes, "Mom, was it worth fighting? Was it worth going through all this for justice?" I thought for a moment, then took her little hand in mine and replied, "It is always worth fighting for justice and dignity, even if the path seems difficult and unknown, because in this struggle we become stronger, learn what we are capable of, learn to stand up for ourselves and those we love. And in this sense, the struggle itself is as important as the result." This story changed both of us, brought us closer to each other, and made us stronger as individuals. We learned that the system is not all-powerful, that the rules work if they are applied and defended correctly, that a quiet, methodical struggle based on facts and the law can be more effective than loud scandals and emotional outbursts, that dignity and self-respect cannot be bought or begged. They can only be earned by one's own actions and decisions, and that the most valuable victory is the victory over one's own fear and powerlessness. We walked home, enjoying the warm spring evening. Katia held my hand and hummed something to herself. At that moment, I realized that, despite all the difficulties, despite my status as a single mother and all the problems associated with it, I am happy and grateful to fate for my amazing, strong-spirited daughter, and that, whatever trials await us ahead, we will cope with them together. Have you ever encountered injustice at school or at work? How did you solve this problem? What helped you achieve justice? Or what did this experience teach you? Share your story. Maybe it will help someone find the strength for their own fight for justice.